I'm Dave Lawrence. Tomorrow and Saturday, comedian and actor Kevin Nealon is back in town. He's going to be at the Blue Note. From his childhood in Connecticut to success on TV and in films. Currently one of the stars of TV's Man with a Plan, vet of SNL for a number of seasons, films with Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy, Jack Nicholson, David Spade, many others. He's our very special guest right now. Hey, Kevin, thanks for doing this, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You grew up in Connecticut. I used to work in Boston for a long time.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
So that's quite a change for you now. Hawaii.
And from reading about you, you had already gotten your bachelor's degree from Sacred Heart by the time that you had done some stand-up. When was it that you realized you had this tremendous gift, Kevin?
I don't know if it was a tremendous gift, but it was a desire that I had, which was tremendous. And I think that's really what you need to kind of make it in this business. You really have to be willing to kind of fail and pick yourself up and keep at it. But I always liked telling jokes when I was a kid, and I liked music too. But performing and singing in front of people just seemed so intimate to me. Telling jokes seemed a lot more doable for my personality. So, I liked making people laugh growing up. I would memorize jokes and tell them and stuff. And I got my BS in marketing in college. And then after that, I moved out to Los Angeles and started going to the open mic nights and just, developing an act and a style.
After your bachelor's, though, weren't you taking some courses at Fairfield University where I read, and of course it could be wrong as we know how the internet works, but it said you became the starting quarterback on their football team.
Yes. I love sports. I love football, and I never played on a high school team because we were always moved around a lot. We lived in Germany for a while, and then when we got back to the States, I went to two different high schools, but I played sandlot football with my buddies, and we played like these rival gangs, these gangs across town, and we had all the equipment and stuff, and we really played hard, no refs. So it was, and then I played some rugby too. So I was ready to play football on a team, and my buddy found out that if we took a night course at Fairfield University, just 3 credits, that would qualify us to play football. So we both signed up for a course in criminology, and I think we went twice. And we got to play on the team. We had a uniform, and the starting quarterback got hurt. So I got to quarterback, and I got to say I had a really good arm. I could really hum that ball. And after the games we played in the sandlot football, this seemed pretty tame,
Right.
So I played the full season and got MVP, and my buddy got All-American, and then from then I moved out to Los Angeles, and my goal was to get into stand-up comedy, but also try out for the LA Express, which was a USFL football team at the time. It was a league it's defunct now, but I was going to become the kicker because I also was the kicker on the team and the punter. And I thought that would be my hook as a stand-up, as to, he's a stand-up, but he's also the kicker for the LA Express.
Yeah, that would be a good bit. Give somebody something to talk about on TV when you're a guest.
Luckily, my career took off before, tryouts, so I'm walking still.
Right, before you could get hurt. I mean, it could have gone a whole different way. Or you could have made a whole bundle of cash and just been retired your whole life, I guess.
That's true.
Where in Connecticut? You were down by
Bridgeport.
Okay, so near New York. I get it.
That was more of WICC, that area.
Right. And Scottsdale, you were listening to NEW probably when you were growing up.
Yeah, down in New Haven and stuff.
And so you get out to, and what makes you make the transition to California? You mentioned heading out there. I mean, was it with the goal of getting into success in the entertainment business?
Yeah, that's a great question. What happened was I knew that they had stand-up comedy clubs in California, and I ventured into New York City to try stand-up there, or not even to try it, but to just get a feel for it, to test the waters. And I went to a club called the Catch a Rising Star, which was like the Improv back then, and it was one of the big clubs. And the experience was such an eye-opener for me because it was so crowded in the room, and it was a small New York room, and there's all these New Yorkers in there smoking, and the stage was a small stage, and the comics up there were just these abrasive kind of New York comics. I remember at the time it was people like Richard Belzer.
Right.
I can't remember the rest of them, but I mean, even Larry David was a stand-up at the time then, and he was doing stand-up. And I thought, oh my God, I can't do this. This is not my speed. And I knew that California had the reputation for being more laid back and a little more gentle. So I thought I'd drive out to California.
I like that.
Out here.
A little more gentle, a little less Andrew Dice Clay and more Pauly Shore, I guess.
more like prop comics, you know.
Right. And you debuted. It's funny because just the other day, a couple weeks ago, a month, whenever it was, we had a totally different cat, Kenny G, but he actually did his debut on a national audience. Is the same as yours. His was on Johnny Carson. Is that really where you got your chance to debut for national TV?
I don't think it was my debut, but it certainly was the highlight of my career, even to this point, even after Weeds and SNL, because as a stand-up back then, doing the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and getting called over to sit on the couch afterwards was a real feather in your cap, you know. But I think, you know, my debut was probably on the Merv Griffin show, or even David Letterman had a show. I think it might have been David Letterman before Johnny.
All these heavy cats. It's still Merv. That's a really that's a big one, and less of a comedian thing, but more just like a heavily noteworthy TV cat, I guess, huh?
Yeah, and it was a great entry-level kind of TV show to do, too, because it wasn't the Tonight Show, you know. And,
right. Warm you up for that.
Afternoons. Yeah, so there was the Merv Griffin show and the Mike Douglas show.
Right.
I did both of those.
Wow.
And then other shows like Evening at the Improv and, you know, like I said, Letterman, too.
That's great, though, with Johnny. And he's a funny, so that for a guy like you, I'm assuming you're looking at him as not only is this a great gig to get to be on, but he's also kind of a funny cat with a personality. Did he appreciate your work at that time?
He really did. And he was so quick. And he was the kind of talk show host, too, that would set you up. And he wasn't always trying to get laughs. You know, like a lot of hosts now, they just want to be the funny one. But he was so great at that. And also I was kind of new to the business. I'd only been doing stand-up for maybe 6 years, you know, 5 or 6 years from the first time I got up. So, you know, and he was older than me, of course, and he was established. And the difference now is I'll go on these talk shows, and I'm usually older than the host. I've been doing, you know, comedy longer. I've been in the business longer than them. So it's not intimidating at all like it was with Johnny Carson.
I know what you're talking about. I remember when radio started, and I was like this young cat, and everybody seemed old. Now they're all younger, so I know the feeling. It wasn't too long after these series of gigs with with Mike Douglas, Merv Griffin, Johnny, that your friend Dana Carvey brings a huge opportunity to you, which is probably how a lot of people listening come to know you as.
Yeah, Dana was a buddy of mine. We knew each other from the stand-up comedy clubs, you know, and we also shared a home when he was in town from San Francisco. When he was down in L.A., he would live in the apartment, the studio apartment above the garage in a house I was renting in the Hollywood Hills with a couple other comics. So, you know, we're pretty good buddies, and he got selected to be on SNL that summer, and he called me like a month afterwards, you know, before the season started. He goes, "Hey, Lorne Michaels is looking for one more cast member. I mentioned you, and so they might want to see your tapes," you know. So, that was kind of exciting because I was never pursuing that because I wasn't a sketch, you know, player or I didn't do impressions or accents or anything. You know, I was just a comic, a really, really good stand-up comic. So I flew in for an audition, and they hired me from that, you know, because it was the chemistry. They were going off of people that knew each other and the whole chemistry.
Right, that's what I was wondering. So it had a lot to do with just that interpersonal dynamic between cats was, and if you knew somebody, you already had a rapport with them, then it made it easier. 9 seasons, is that what you ended up doing?
9 seasons, yeah. So I worked with Dana, who I knew, and also with Jen Hooks, who I was dating at the time. So it was pretty coincidental that we all got on.
Incredible. And the dating, you were dating beforehand or after as a result?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
A year before and then a year during.
Unbelievable. And so does something like that just kind of tear it apart or not?
I think it would have been torn apart either way.
Because that working together can. I remember having a sales weasel. Yeah, I had a sales weasel in my life. It did not work out well at all. The Mr. Subliminal, the subliminal message man, Franz from Hans and Franz, Mr. No Depth Perception, of course, Weekend Update anchor. How does things happen there? You have ideas for things, they have ideas, writers, I mean, and certainly the Weekend Update thing. I mean, describe a little for people on the outside who are curious and are fans. How does stuff develop and or do you get roles?
Things develop in all different ways, and you come up with characters, you know, in different ways too. You know, I would get to the point where I just walk into the video stores at the time, like, you know, whatever the video store was.
Blockbuster or whatever.
Yeah, just to look at titles of videos or, log lines and try to get ideas from that, or you'd be talking to somebody and you'd overhear a conversation at the diner about somebody talking about something, or you'd see somebody in the street, a character, and you kind of, there was a guy on 57th Street in New York City that was always singing on the street. He was singing opera, and he was like a homeless guy, sort of. He'd sing opera, and he seemed to have a pretty good voice, and that's how Sandler came up with his opera man thing. He saw that guy.
Right, very organic is how it sounds.
Yeah.
That's cool. And what's weird is there's so many cats from the SNL thing that you've ended up doing stuff with outside of there, and not necessarily people who were that you were working with at the time. But like, for example, Roxanne, Steve Martin, Daryl Hannah, first movie, yeah?
Yeah.
And was Steve an influence, and how do you end up in a movie there with him?
Well, Steve was a total influence for me. I loved his stand-up comedy. It's one of the reasons I got into it. And so I kind of got that movie before I got on SNL. I did that movie the summer right before I got on SNL that fall. And that was just an audition. They were using a lot of stand-up comics for that. So they used Damon Wayans, Steve Middleman, and myself, and a couple other guys. Rick Scheidner was another comic on there. So we all just kind of hung out, and I got to know him a little bit and got to know him more over the years, from Saturday Night Live. And to this day, we're friends. We play the banjo together, and we have lunch together here and there.
Wow! You play because he plays like that bluegrass stuff. You jam with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool. And you can play. You can really play.
Yeah, I've been playing since I was 18. I don't play that well because I'm not a big fan of bluegrass music.
Right.
I just kind of like the idea of picking an instrument really fast like that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Sometimes people just want to dabble with it enough to at least understand it, and that'd be great to hear you. Or you happen to be bringing that when you come to town, or no?
No, I don't play that on stage really. But I did get a ukulele the last time I was in Hawaii, and after playing that, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, and that's easy to take with you too, right? You just shove that kind of
so light and
in the bag.
Yeah.
And another one of those cats with an affiliation sort of connection to you, Dan Aykroyd, obviously Coneheads, and you're appropriately in that. Was that a link through having done the show, or is that just totally separate and he just happens to coincidentally be linked to that show too?
Yeah, I think that was probably a link through the show.
That got you that.
Yeah, I think probably Lorne Michaels had them use a lot of us, and I didn't have a very big part in that movie, but it was fun to be part of it.
Yeah, still, it's something to put on your. I mean, come on, compared to most cats who are listening, who are like, well, I didn't have a part in any movie, let alone
That's right.
let alone a small part in one with Dan Aykroyd. Hello. And you mentioned that Steve was an influence, and I'm just thinking of your age and stuff. Richard Pryor, was that an influence? Who are some of the other cats?
I certainly enjoyed Richard Pryor's comedy, but it wasn't really up my alley as far as I never really kind of got into Richard Pryor until I saw his Live on Sunset Strip, and I watched that, and I thought, wow, this guy, he's really got a lot of soul on stage, and he's really opening up and being revealing, and that really inspired me a lot. But I think, the three big guys that influenced me were Steve Martin, Albert Brooks, and Andy Kaufman, because they were so unique in their own ways and so original, and I love that,
Yeah, Andy was real original. That says a lot right there. Let's give a plug to Hiking with Kevin, which is, if people want to go on YouTube, you can. It's an interesting sort of. We have a local comedian, Andy Bumatai. He does this driving thing where he puts somebody in the car with him. They drive around. So it kind of reminded me of that. This Hiking with Kevin. So it's you're out on a hike. I've seen the one with Howie Mandel. He was just on the show recently. Chelsea Handler, Conan O'Brien. Give a little plug for what this is.
Yeah, Hiking with Kevin, it started with me hiking with a buddy of mine, Matthew Modine. He's an actor. He's in Full Metal Jacket. And I remember at the time thinking I should just kind of, for fun, interview Matthew Modine and, ask him questions. And I had a funny bit. I thought it'd be funny if I was interviewing him. We were both so out of breath. We couldn't understand the question or the answer. And we played that out, and that was funny. And then on the way down, I was asking him more questions like, what roles have you turned down in movies? And he turned down some major roles like Back to the Future. Wow. He turned down Top Gun, Tom Cruise part.
Yeah.
He turned down Wall Street.
Oh, man.
And so I just started posting them just on Twitter and Instagram, and then it became so popular I started putting it on YouTube, and I got my own YouTube channel together called, you go to youtube.com/Kevin Nealon Comedy, and I put them up. I try to do one a week.
They're very cool, and it's a great insight into, it's casual, it's completely out of the usual kind of place you would see something like this. So I like it. And the way you described it was cool too, how it just sort of evolved. And that evolution, when I think of like Adam Sandler, fellow New England cat, by the way, or spent a bunch of time up there. When I think of him and all the stuff that you guys have done together, and I don't have the full list, but I'm going to say some of them. Anger Management, which also had Jack Nicholson, and Blended, 8 Crazy Nights, Wedding Singer, Happy Gilmore, You Don't Mess with the Zohan. Is all of that an evolution of like being friends, or how does it end up you and this one cat have done so much stuff?
Well, I asked Adam that too. I said, "Do you hire everybody out of loyalty or guilt?" You know, he goes, "Well, I just when you find people you enjoy working with, you keep them around and kind of get to know each other's strengths, and that's always kind of an asset, you know. So that's basically why he does that."
David Spade, Joe Dirt,
yeah,
Dave Budd too from the pack.
I see Spade all the time now. I see Dana. In fact, I'm going to see Dana Carvey tonight. We're working at a club here in town together. I host a show called New Material Night once a month.
Unbelievable.
And he's one of the comics that's on tonight. And so I see Spade around a lot. I see Carvey. I see John Lovitz once in a while, and I ran into Nora Dunn the other night.
What about Eddie Murphy? Daddy Daycare you guys did together.
Yeah. That was just a random kind of an audition that they hired me for.
Okay. So you don't see him around a whole bunch.
No. I was one of the people on his Mark Twain Award thing, you know, that was kind of paying tribute to him.
And Man with a Plan, TV show that you're in now. What's next with that? That just keeps going, through the end of this year?
Yeah, we're in the second season of Man with a Plan. That stars Matt LeBlanc from Friends. And I play his older brother. And it's a traditional sitcom, multi-camera with a live studio audience. And that's really fun. That's been fun to do. And it kind of keeps me in town a little bit so I can hang out with my family. So I like that.
Well, that's a good way to sort of wrap it up with you because you say you like to hang out with your family, and town is L.A., right? That's what you're talking about.
That's right, yeah.
So one thing I know about you, as a final thing to mention with you, is causes you're touched by, and I was sort of looking around trying to find, and it looked like something that we definitely share, and that would be animals. And it looks like you really have tried to give some visibility, because there are some terrible things happening, whether it's elephant poaching crisis, rhino poaching crisis, pangolins, it could be domestic animals having trouble. What was it that touched you that made you try to do things to advocate on behalf of them and give a plug to some of the things that you do to try to help them?
Well, I became aware of animal abuse and cruelty by reading. You know, my wife was an animal activist, my ex-wife, and I started reading up about factory farming and slaughterhouses and things like that. I just didn't want to be part of that. So that's what it was for me. It was ethical, and it was also for health reasons too. So I got involved with PETA and some other organizations, and now I'm not as active, but I do a lot of fundraisers for shelters and try to raise awareness about overpopulation and the benefits of spaying and neutering your pets.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that the passion is about the you're touched by it, you realize they have a face, I'm not eating them, so now I'm going to be vegan, I'm not going to be supporting these horrific factory farms, and then at the same time, just the overpopulation of domestic pets. So those are the two areas, it sounds like. Less about like the international crises that are going on with animals.
Right. I mean, that's some of the causes I get involved with. I'm also a big, a supporter for helping homeless people in Los Angeles, and other things like that.
Yeah, well,
and it's funny. I was in Maui, I don't know, 20 years ago or 25, 30 years. I can't remember what it was. And I was staying over on the Hana side, and I saw a dog there that was running around the resort I was staying at. And the next day, I saw the same dog. It was like a border collie, and his back leg was all mangled and hanging off. And the manager of the hotel said he probably belongs to one of the ranchers, and he probably got hit by a car, and the rancher will probably just shoot him. So my wife and I took him to the vet and got the leg fixed and got him all dewormed and everything. And I called Gary Shandling, who had been at the same resort about a week before, because he was talking about a dog that he ran into, and he goes, "Describe the dog to me. That sounds like the dog I ran into, and I was going to take him home." But then when I was chasing him to get him to the plane, I stepped in a hole in the field, and I sprained my ankle. So I explained, I described the dog, and he goes, "That sounds like the same dog. Will you bring him over to me I just want to see if it's the same dog." And, so we brought the dog back with us from Hawaii in a crate, fixed his leg, and that was the same dog it turns out that Gary ran into. And so, we gave him to Gary. And he had that dog for about, 12 years. Loved him.
What a killer story. I mean, that's what a great connection to the islands, and what great insight into the kindness that's underneath some major Hollywood cats that we've all grown up with. I love it. Do you like public radio at all?
I do. I'm not liberal. I'm a sensible.
You're sensible, but you do support public radio.
Aloha, everybody. It's Kevin Nealon. I want you to grab that knob and rip it off the radio right now, because you're in the best place possible with my best friend and fellow animal lover, Dave Lawrence. It's All Things Considered on Hawaii Public Radio. But we need your money. We're having a pledge drive. It's a nonprofit radio station. Please do your part. And thanks for your helping hand and your millions of dollars.
Giving you a hug, a high five.
This was great, man. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, too. Thanks for the plug for the station. Thanks for helping out the animals, and the great story about that the dog from Maui that's gigantic.
Yeah.
I'm high-fiving you, man. Thanks for everything. Have a wonderful time in town.
Thanks, buddy. Aloha.
Aloha, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye.